says the 60,000 naira minimum wage proposal of the federal government is not sustainable and cannot stand. They say this will simply mean that many states will spend all their federal allocation on just paying salaries with nothing left for development purposes, and that a few states will end up borrowing to pay workers every month. The NGF says this is not in the collective interest of the country, including workers. The governors are now appealing that all parties involved, especially labor unions, consider all the socio-economic variables and settle for an agreement that they call sustainable, durable, and fair to all, as well as other segments of the society who have legitimate claim to public resources. However, the forum urges all parties to consider the fact that the minimum wage negotiations also involve consequential adjustments across all cadres, including pensioners, and cautions parties in this important discussion to look beyond just signing a document for the sake of it. They insist that any agreement to be signed should be sustainable and realistic. Very interesting development, a new twist to the ongoing conversation. Prior to this time, recall that just after the agreement with Labour on Monday, the federal government committed to having the tripartite committee sit for the next 7 days, after which a new figure is expected. But earlier on, Governor of Imo State, Hope Uzodinma, said the tripartite committee is close to arriving at an acceptable minimum wage figure. Governor Uzodinma spoke on behalf of the committee at the end of its meeting yesterday, assuring Nigerians that the figure for workers is underway.
We are making remarkable progress. We've made a lot of progress. Discussions have been very smooth, and we are almost getting to the point of agreement by all the three parties. I'm sure by tomorrow, when we will reconvene by 11 o'clock, we will reach to some concrete kind of agreement, and that will be the position of that we will present to the plenary for adoption. No, it is not a matter of, we are taking a holistic approach to the whole issue, because it's not about minimum wage. Wages should be anchored around our capacity to generate revenue.
Joining me on the show today is policy analyst and former president of the Nigerian German Business Group, Femi Dagunro. Mr. Femi Dagunro, thank you for joining us on the program this evening. If you can hear me, let's dive into it. The latest we're hearing is the position of the Nigeria Governors Forum asking for caution, outrightly actually saying that the 60,000 naira initially agreed with by the federal government isn't sustainable. What do you make of the process thus far?
Well, basically, you can understand the fact that even the 30,000, when it was announced, not all the states were able to commit to it or to pay, and not all the manufacturing sector, the service sector. I mean, let's look at it, the public and the private sector. Not everyone can really afford to meet this target. And now, if you increase it to 60, it will still be the same thing. And then people will still have issue in paying. So what they're saying precisely is that look, not everybody can pay that, and it is just a good thing that we have to take that into consideration. That's why there's negotiation, and that's why there's negotiation. And when you have negotiations ongoing, they will still have room for this back and forth to see where and how can this be resolved. But at the end of the day, it should be in the interest of the citizens, so that the country will not have to suffer more than it has suffered in the past.
The news that federal government was offering 105,000 naira yesterday was dismissed as fake news by the presidency, and we've also heard a top government official insinuate a lesser figure. Precisely what factors or indices do you think should guide the figure the committee is to decide on now?
First of all, we have to be looking at what is our revenue. how much are we going to make? Can we make even what we have projected for? And we have to look at the inflation as well. So many factors. You see, there's no doubt that, there is hunger in the land. There's no doubt about that. There's no doubt we all see inflation. We all see the trend. But it's just the fact that the citizens are saying, look, if you consider us as important as we are, or we think we should be considered, the government should, tighten its belt in so many other ways as well. And the government is saying, look, we know what we are doing. We were considering you, and we'll still consider you. So it is all over the world that negotiation has to be, rounded up at some point, and for the whole thing to move on. So the labor will consider his own movement, his own people, and the government will consider what is coming in and what will go out.
Governors have also now called attention of labor to the fact that it is beyond minimum wage. There is also the consequential adjustments across all cadres, which include pensioners, and the impact it will have on the other sectors of the economy. But labor is saying the new minimum wage must be equal in purchasing power to the value of 30,000 naira in 2019 and 18,000 naira in 2014. Does that make economic sense to you?
You agree with me that we're just still talking about consider. And what they have brought up is quite important as well for the labor to look into that. Because the minimum wage or what the pensioners are earning now cannot be considered to be good enough for them to sustain their living standard. So a lot of all these things, that's why it may take some time for us to really come to that conclusion that what the labor is demanding, what the government is proposing, we come to a point whereby we both agree just, very soon. I hope so. But when all these things are coming out, there are facts that has to be considered. These facts must be considered.
Well, we're trying to lay all the facts on the table. If we get a good connection with Mr. Joe Femi Dagunro, but I guess
tomorrow. But then, if we can, I think it would be a good thing. But with all this, and the governors are saying what they can afford and what they can't afford, I believe there will still be more debate. There will still be more consensus. There will still be more to go into these meetings, into this negotiation. But at the end of the day, negotiation can still be going on. It is not compulsory that it has to be only immediately we have to resolve it. Let's start with something. If we start with 70, we can say, okay, we are starting with 60 or whatever amount we agreed on. And in another 24 months, we believe that something, there will have been improvement in our GDP, in our incomes, in whatever we are looking at. And then we increase it by another 20% or by another 25%. We can do it considering that. Not just everything has to be 100%. We can divide it into a certain percentage and with time frame or timeline to say, okay, in another 24 months, this is what we agree. And then in another 24 months, another 6 months, this is what we give.
We lost the audio, Mr. Femi Dagunro. If you can work on that for us so that we can hear you from here. But I want us to explore the potential impact you think this new minimum wage will have on the other sector of the country. Some groups, for instance, have raised concerns about what they call the economic consequences of labor's demand on Nigerians who don't earn salaries. So they are talking about increase in inflation rate, for instance, unemployment rate with the possibility of multinationals and other employers downsizing their workforce if the figure is significantly increased. How much impact do you think this can have on the larger part of the populace?
Everything you've mentioned will surely happen. There will be unemployment. Most people will not be able to pay, especially in the private sector. We have these small and medium enterprises. And then the minimum wage is 60,000. Some cannot even pay 40 or 30. So definitely there will be unemployment. There will be redundancy. And that will not be well for the country as well. So that is why I'm saying that a consensus has to be reached, an agreement has to be reached that let's do it in phases. If the phase one is going to give us a certain amount, there will be phase two, there will be phase three, and we can achieve something concrete. We can be friends and brothers keepers, and we can move on with the system in the government. I think, yeah, that is something we should consider. It can be done in phases. It must not be done all at once.
Until recently, when we heard from the Imo State Governor, and just today, a press release from the Nigeria Governors Forum, state governors have been relatively quiet in this negotiation. Some have even, gone ahead to announce a new minimum wage, as we've seen, I think, in Edo and in Cross River State. So the concerns that you raised earlier about the ability of state governors to pay. But when you hear governors today talk about sustainable, durable, and fair wage to all other segments of the society, within the 7-day period that organized labor has gone on strike, how comfortable do you feel? Is this taking us back if we are contesting the 60,000 naira?
Well, in some cases, you might think maybe I say it would have been okay if it is not a national minimum wage. We call it national minimum wage. And if it is national minimum wage, it has to be a national minimum wage. If it is statewide, that if the states have the power to negotiate within their own capacity to say, look, this is what we can pay in my state, and this is what the labor union in that state will agree. That would have been fantastic but then when we say national minimum wage, it cuts across the 36 states, including Abuja as well. So now, for those states that have gone far to say, okay, gone ahead, rather, to say, look, we are going to pay this. And the civil servants in those states, they've accepted, or the labor union in those states, they've accepted, perhaps. Maybe it is something we have to be looking at and say, listen, if states can negotiate, maybe they should negotiate. But if we say national minimum wage, then it has to be national minimum wage. Those are the areas, and whatever law that guides this national minimum wage, whatever law that guides states minimum wage or local government minimum wage, all these things have to be reviewed. And I think this will be an opportunity for the government to begin to look into some of these things, and the labor unions as well, so that they will not have to come to this point whereby one state will say, I can't afford it. Another state will say, well, I can afford it. Or the private sector will say, look, you've not carried us along, and then we cannot afford it. So there will be this hiccup here and there. Maybe it is time for us to review what we call national minimum wage, what we call living wage, and what the state or the private sector can pay. I think it will take some time for us to really get ahead with this.
Let's take a short break now, Mr. Femi Dagunro, and we'll be back with more updates on the new minimum wage palaver. Stay with us, everyone. The Inspector General of Police has met with senior officers to review the state of security.
We are continuing our coverage of the arrest of Godwin Emefiele.
The Senate has summoned the governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria to properly brief the Senate regarding the state of the economy.
President Bola Tinubu has announced the total removal of fuel subsidy.
The fresh subsidy is gone. What I will never take is threat.
Let's now bring you more development from Ibadan, the Oyo State capital, where an explosion has taken place. Tell us about this incident.
TVC News. First with breaking news.
TVC News Weekend Lineup. TVC Breakfast Saturday with Kemi Fola Adeyemo and Emmanuel Ajayi. Political Standpoint with Precious Amayo. Newsweek with Mark Otabo. Politics and Sunday with Femi Akonde. Community Forum with Sarah Yeku. Get ready for the biggest stories, fresh perspectives and burning news discussions that round up the weekend. Only on TVC News.
The big question is, will the federal government, state governors, organized labor and organized private sector be able to agree on a figure as the new minimum wage in the coming days. The tripartite committee has been meeting. They promised to meet for the next 7 days. Quite a number of figures have come up in the past few days. I've been speaking with policy analyst and former president of the Nigerian-German business group, Femi Dagunro. Mr. Femi Dagunro, thank you for staying the course on the program. Let me quickly bring in our correspondent who's been on top of this story since it broke. Joke Adisa joins me live from Abuja for more updates on this development. Joke, some news platform quoted 105,000 yesterday as the figure being proposed by the federal government. That turned out to be false, right?
Exactly. Recall that the federal government has come out to deny that particular report. There's nothing as such that's coming from the government, the authentic information from the government, and as the correspondent covering the other things. I wonder where all these figures are flying from. Repeatedly, we have put calls to many of these people leaders. They are trying to be careful as far as these figures are concerned. They are keeping secret, and maybe at the end of the day, they don't want everything to come out from the committee. And so basically that is what we have. But if you look at reports that we have been seeing, so many figures are flying out. Beginning there is 70,000, there is 75,000 naira, and minimum wage and all that. But the challenge there is attributing this all these figures to something. That has been really very difficult. A couple of times I put a response through, and the labor leaders are keeping, even on the government side, it's not really, they are not forthcoming. They are giving everything to the committee as well. But the greatest challenge, as we see, is the need for all parties, the three parties, the tripartite committee to arrive at a clear figure. So, and that's whatever happens will be agreed upon by Monday night, because that is when the 7th day is given as the last.
So the agreement reached on Monday was for the committee to meet every day for 1 week, and that's why Labour suspended the strike for 7 days. Is a new figure expected at the end of these 7 days? Is that the expectation?
Definitely. Yes, definitely. That is the expectation of every Nigerian. That's the expectation even of the government, but definitely government will not want a repeat of what happened last Monday, where special services were disrupted, where economic activities were grounded. Definitely both parties, all parties involved in this negotiation will not want a repeat of that. So they will certainly want to have an agreeable figure, but how well they manage it is also another point. 15th round is very key here. The government, the organized labor, and even the private sector, of course, will have to shift ground. But the major challenge is how well governors will be able to meet this new figure. Many of them are still paying 30,000 naira. Many of them are still not able to pay 30,000 naira. So all of these, well, whatever happens, if there should be any breakdown again in this
absolutely.
And it means that there will be another round. I believe government will happen.
Thank you for the updates there. Joke Adisa live for us in Abuja. Let's return to policy analyst and former president of Nigerian-German business group, Mr. Femi Dagunro. Mr. Dagunro, you recall that following the removal of fuel subsidy, the position of the federal government is that governors now get more. And then the question of how much internally generated revenue are also coming from state governments. Do you think that those are the questions labor union has to ask more often at the state level?
Well, you see, the labor union have always been asking same questions, and to say, look, we have not seen the government tightening up their belt, as they've told the citizens to tighten up their belt. I think they've been saying that, and they're not just talking about subsidy removal alone. They are talking about the electricity prices being hiked up. A lot of all these things they are talking about, these are legitimate things. The people in government, they know it. They recognize that as well. But you see, it takes two to tango. In a situation we find ourselves in this country, I understand the labor and I understand the people. I live with people who cannot afford to really live let's put it this way, leave their normal standard before. So it's really pathetic and it's really painful. But what can we do? For me, has always been, if we are taking loans for infrastructure, if we are taking loans for development, let us use the loan to, really fund those projects that these loans are meant for. We can't be taking loans to fund salaries. It's not profitable. It won't bring any other thing. So let us do things that will yield profit for the nation. Let NMPC begin to look at how to, turn around their companies and their affiliate companies and generate profit. We've seen other companies in the oil industry or the other countries doing that as well. Look at Saudi Aramco today. One of the biggest and the richest. So we can do something. Let us have more transparency in some of these things.
Absolutely.
And, things will work out well. So when we are transparent, like Dr. Addis has said there, nobody knows exactly. We are just having leaked information, and we can't work on this leaked information or this gossip information or gossips, like I would say. But then we just have to believe and wait until when it comes out. But if we are transparent and everybody believes that the government is committed to doing what they promised, and that's why I said it could be in phases. And if it's in phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, and we see what is going on, and then I think the people will be happy and they'll be able to move on. People want to move on with their lives. People want to do something and get the reward for it. And they are seeing it that, look, we are doing something, we are not getting enough reward for what we are doing. And that is the pathetic aspect of it, and that's the most painful thing.
Let's attempt to drive this home, because government has said that we cannot keep driving up recurrent at the expense of capital expenditure. But some are saying that perhaps Labour should also ask more questions that would include the agitation to reduce salaries and emoluments of government officials. Is that something you think is relevant here?
Yes, you see, we've been talking about that for a long time, and people have been saying that, and people have been agitating for that. You see, but suddenly we saw that the thing is not really coming down. It's just rising and rising, and people say, oh, if you can increase your salary, if you can have 10 PAs or 2 or 3 PAs, then definitely you are playing on our intelligence. Yes, there are a lot of questions people will continue to ask, and there are a lot of things people will continue to agitate for. But the point is, let us see a very concrete decision being made and say, let the government, from the government side, to come out and say, look, we are cutting costs as well. If the people can see that the government is cutting costs in the right areas, and they see our legislators cutting costs as well, then it will be easy for people to believe in what the government is doing, and they'll be able to trust the government for planning ahead. If they know that in another 1 or 2 years, this is where we are going to be, and they see the steps we are taking towards getting to where we want to be, I think it will be very convincing. And that's what the people want to see. They want to hear from the government. They want to see that the government is committed to it, and they want to see the steps the government is taking, or the steps they are taking to meet up what they have said. If we can do that, honestly, we will be a good country to really achieve great things in the
Absolutely.
future.
We have to go now. If you can, in a minute, the debate is on whether it was ethical or even legal for Labour to have shut down the national grid. What do you think is the way forward?
Well, that one, I think a couple of people have said, the SGF said, is something wrong, and a lot of people have made up their mind, or the legal luminaries, they've said a lot of things about that, and they've even referred to those who did it in the past, how they were treated and all that. But I think it's not something we have to continue to do. It's not something we have to do, because at the end of the day, Labour might find itself being hated by the people they are fighting for. And, when people don't have electricity to, sleep well, to do their things, and they say, oh, why? That question may even backfire. So I think in the nearest future, that should not be the main thing. We should talk, and we should continue to talk reasonably, and we should not just go to that extent of putting the whole nation into blackness or darkness.
Some government officials went as far as calling it a treasonable act. But that's our time. Thank you so much for joining us and talking to us on the program this evening. Policy analyst, former president of the Nigerian German Business Group, Femi Dagunro.
Thank you.
That's our program today, everyone. You can watch it again at midnight and at 6 a.m. tomorrow. I am Nifemi Oguntoye.